アメリカのケーキってすっごく大きいのよ。1個でお腹いっぱいになっちゃうの。
Oh, come on, Momoko, you're exaggerating. I mean, next thing you're gonna tell me is that this donut is a little too much. Cold open for this one featured what's kind of the typical Hazuki and Masaru segment at this point. The former was crying, and the latter did something to cheer her up. Yeah, you're probably just gonna throw it away as soon as you get the blue one, or according to the manga, Ganondorf is gonna take it by mistake. Also, gotta say, it's certainly quite the aesthetic choice to have the pipe be the tail feathers. Anyway, the episode proper opened with Hazuki and Momoko discussing the differences between Eastern and Western sweets, with the former in particular talking about tea ceremony treats, which I guess didn't work well with Momoko's Google Translate headphones, as it seemed to just come out as omogashi and higashi, which, going by the actual Google translations, it comes out to main sweets and East if typed in Romanji, so maybe that's what she heard. And that probably got confused with that one rhythm game. Thus, Hazuki decided to invite Momoko to her house for a somewhat traditional tea ceremony. I mean, as someone who has sat in on these things, I can tell you they're pretty damn strict, whilst this was more akin to someone inviting a friend over for a literal tea party. Granted, but it did at least add a level of authenticity, having likely been formally trained in the art of the ceremony. And they did do some of the legit rituals that you are supposed to do at these sorts of ceremonies, including turning the cup to admire its craftsmanship. Personally, they all kind of look the same to me. And of course, drinking the ridiculously bitter tea that you practically need the sweets to balance it out with. Legit piece of advice, go to tea ceremonies at your own risk, because they're honestly not all that fun, and I mostly just went to one as a part of my training. Anyway, this later led to Momoko asking Hazuki about what exactly Bai's relationship was with her family, which she couldn't answer, probably because she didn't want to say servant. Fortunately, Momoko did somewhat accurately equate her to a nanny in English terms. It's a pun! Well, that, and it actually is a pretty clever little bit of foreshadowing for what's about to come. The subject then quickly changed to the bird ocarina from the cold opener, as Momoko apparently had a similar flute, but lost it. Thus, both of the Ojamajo played it, and didn't bother to clean it in between uses, like, come on, that's how y'all spared that one thing from a few years ago. Still, Momoko wanted to show it to her parents, so she asked if she could have it.
Really? Can I take it?
So basically what happened here was that Momoko only heard part of what Hazuki said, specifically the kashite ageru part, minus that first word. Ageru by itself means to give, which is probably what Momoko heard, or at least what only registered with her, but the pretense kashite converts it to borrow, which is what Hazuki was trying to say. It's a good example of miscommunication born of realistic ignorance of a foreign language that was further reinforced with Hazuki not knowing what "can I take it" means. It's good storytelling that builds off the earlier misunderstanding of nanny for NANI! That said, I do think Momoko is a little more at fault here for jumping the gun a little too much. I mean, regardless of culture, I think most people should be a little more hesitant about receiving gifts out of nowhere. Unless Toei thinks this is some sort of Western stereotype, because they do like those. But yeah, this would be the main conflict of the episode, a big misunderstanding that would continue to be exacerbated as Momoko would end up showing off the ocarina the next day and claim that Hazuki had given it to her within ear range of Masaru. But hey, maybe she won't count as a dirty regifter if they're kind of the same person, at least in terms of who was voicing them. Which, bit of a side note, but strangely enough, in spite of playing a major role in this episode, Masaru wasn't listed in the credits, just Momoko. In fact, this is also the case for other episodes where the two Nami Miyahara characters had speaking roles. Like, did they want to prevent any confusion? Though I think a lot of kids would understand if a VA had to pull double duty. Plus, it is just wrong to not give an actor all their credits. If anything else, it probably would have made the character themselves feel better, because as is so often the case with Masaru's episodes, he moped around for most of it without saying what was bothering him, even though it was kind of obvious in this case. This does leave me a little split with this episode, but we'll elaborate a little more later. Anyway, concerned about their friend, and also afraid to just ask her what was wrong, because this episode is all about poor communication, the other Ojamajo decided to perform the magical stage to find out what was bothering Hazuki. So yeah, brainwashing and healing are bad, but invading somebody else's privacy, a-okay. I mean, yeah, it does kind of end up biting them in the ass later, but still, I feel like the witches world needs to fix their meta. Also, in spite of lacking Hazuki for obvious reasons, the spell somehow was still able to give life to the ocarina to tell its story. As it turned out, Masaru originally received it as a prize at a summer festival. He and Hazuki ended up playing it that night because, again, the show is insisted on restarting 2020. And the next day, through an awkward 3D shot, Hazuki ended up losing a hat, so to make it up to her, Masaru gave her the ocarina and notably told her to keep it a secret. This was important because guess what Momoko ended up doing when running into Masaru on her way to see Hazuki?
今葉月ちゃんにこれ
Now, of course, she was unable to explain how she learned about their connection through the ocarina, which upset Masaru to the point that he started to yell at himself, and also threw the ocarina into the the river. Yeah, at this point, I kind of wish Ganondorf would just take this thing away like he did with Saria's.
あかんわ最悪の展開
If you're talking about all this melodrama, I agree. Of course, though, Hazuki tried to pull a Link and fish out the lost ocarina from the water, with Momoko and Masaru soon joining in. The latter, of course, seemed to realize that he might have jumped the gun like he usually does when he becomes extra emo. And with everyone together, the rest of the Ojamajo managed to just casually slip in and join the search. Eventually, they managed to find it thanks to the ocarina having some leftover sentience from the magical stage, and Masaru didn't seem to question this at all. Like, they did make it clear that he could hear it, so wouldn't he be at least a little freaked out by it and...
The answer is don't think about it!
Anyway, the episode ended with the childhood friends fully making up by playing a tune together with the ocarina that was just in the dirty river water. Seriously, what is with this episode and its total lack of proper hygiene? This episode does have some great messages that are well told, it's just that the main conflict is kind of frustrating. Like, maybe it's a bit more of a personal issue, but I just don't care for misunderstanding plots, especially when it feels like they're needlessly dragging it out. And my other, and honestly kind of bigger issue with this episode, was the fact that this was yet another Masaru episode, where he was the center of a lot of angst, when really, I think his character should have developed beyond that at this point. While I wouldn't say this is a complete case of flanderization, as at least Masaru isn't a total caricature, it does feel like he's also a bit stagnant after 3 seasons by this point. His episodes always involve something very personal to him, which then leads to him lashing out in some sort of excessive, at least kind of violent manner. They also often end up involving his childhood friend in Hazuki, who will help to resolve the issue in some way. Granted, this time was a little different in that she caused the issue, but that also led to, paradoxically, the best and worst part of this episode. As we went over, I actually love how the misunderstanding came about through a realistic example of things getting lost in translation. Thus, it led to a good lesson about proper communication that goes well with the general theme of this season about understanding different cultures. However, everything in between was a little grating for me. Protracted misunderstandings do annoy me when characters are given ample opportunity to clear the air, and when they don't, it just becomes eye-rolling. As a result, this did just become another story where Masaru got angsty and lashed out. It made sense the first time, but that was about 2 seasons ago, making it feel like the character has really stagnated. Thus, it does become hard to take his plight seriously due to the law of diminishing returns. Again, it doesn't make him a bad character, and overall, I still thought this was a decent episode, if only for the well-executed lesson and theming. However, like that wet ocarina, this episode could have used a little more fine-tuning. Thank you for watching, and as always, be sure to check out some of our other videos on this channel. Pretty soon, we might have to do some sort of video or videos discussing what we're gonna cover for next season. Whether it'll be like a longer form video or maybe a bunch of shorts, we'll see how my schedule works out. So look forward to it. Until then though, for now my friends, and Oh, sorry, dude. I can't really play anything for you. Well, maybe I could put something on my Bluetooth here. Let's see.